So yes, perfect. That's how it would work out. And Joy, if you don't mind switching.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel Heinz. This is my sign name here, and the reason is Heinz, just like ketchup. So, what I was like growing up, it was just basically my focus on right now cochlear implants because I already, I have one. Have have any of you seen one? Yeah, okay, yeah, sure. How many of you know about cochlear implants already? Okay, good number of you. All right, some of you haven't. That's great. No, so I'm really excited to be able to explain what that is, what it's like traveling with that, with captioning and languages. And so we'll get started to really get excited. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Got the PowerPoint ready somewhere here. Sorry, give me just one moment. Okay. All right, so let me tell you my journey with the cochlear implant. Some of you have heard of it, some of you haven't. Okay. Can you see my screen? Everyone? Okay, perfect. Wonderful. All right. So, as you can see with the picture in the background is an x-ray. That's my actual x-ray. You notice something different about that image, that x-ray. Most x-rays are just the skull, correct? And that's really what all it is. But you notice in my x-ray, there's something different. What do you notice different? Exactly. That's my cochlear implant, my CI. You see the wires and everything. See it inside. That's the wire that goes inside my cochlea. And so I'll explain more about that later. Next, please. Sorry about that technical difficulty. All right, so what is a cochlear implant? So a CI is a device that a lot of people use hearing aids, and I have hearing, I had hearing aids, and a lot of people helps them hear, but sometimes their hearing just goes down. And so people that are born deaf that often will use hearing aids to increase the amplification of sound is what those do. A CI does not amplify sound. A CI is a bypass to your cochlea. So what is a cochlea exactly? That's where the electrical signals uh, are sent to the brain to make you understand sound. That's what cochlear implant is. So a CI for short. I'm curious, did any of you know what a cochlear implant is? Did you know what it was before I explained it? No? Okay. So when I expound on it, you'll understand even more so. And it's very political as well. and it affects a lot of social aspects. It's not just for hearing. It affects many different areas and aspects of life, but we'll expand on that later. So let me give you a hearing quiz, if you would. How do you hear sound? So, I mean, we all have earlobes, right? You can see it. Notice part. That's the outer ear. We all have three parts of our ears, right? You know, well, technically there's a fourth, but mostly we talk about this for three of them. The outer inner ear, this portion, some look like this, some are closed, some are not formed regularly, you know, but that's how we collect the hearing sounds. Then we have the middle ear, which is where the eardrum is, right here. And so when sound enters the canal, the sound waves come in and hit that drum. And that drum moves and creates it. It creates movement amongst the bones that are behind it. And those bones is right there at the cochlea, it's pushing on the cochlea. And it sounds, those signals go through the cochlear right here, and it travels through. And so the inside of that section looks like this. It's this spiraling section. You know, people hear high frequencies or low frequencies. The low frequencies, like say a lawnmower or earthquake. The high frequencies, meaning like a bird, high pitched sounds, things like that. And as the cochlea goes around, each part is responsible for the cochlea, all the way from the low all the way to the high. So basal is what it goes. So it goes all the way to the high frequency, which is the apex. So inside you have this here, the nerve endings. Oops. The inside is where you have this portion that has the nerves and the NAs and PAs and things like that. And it goes all the way along and it has this like hairs, if you would, and it just when it moves, it's creating these signals that go to the brain, the frequencies. So they have hair cells, hair follicles all along it, along the cochlea. And as this fluid goes back and forth, it sends signals to the nerve, and those go shoot to the brain. Each time they move, each single one that they move. And that is how you actually hear. And so mine are gone. None. You have it, but I don't. Those hair follicles are gone, means I just have this fluid moving back and forth, and I get no sound, and that's why I'm deaf. So, does that kind of clear that up about the cochlear and how it actually works? Okay, great. So that's what the hair follicles look like right here. There's little follicles right there, the left side of the picture. So remember, I was talking about how the cochlear goes around, and there's different, and each hair is different responsibility for different frequencies. And so you have all of them. Some of them, kind of break off, in the end. Some of them are just kind of not as standing up, if you would. So some people have a higher pitch sound, and have a high pitch, but they can't hear the low pitch, vice versa, things like that. So you have this graph here, and there's different decibels, dB, and that's also frequencies. They're different, decibels and frequencies. So frequencies is how much of the pitch you hear. Whether it's a train, or it's a low frequency or high frequency, pianos, birds, hearing the keys, the low bass keys on the piano, all the way to the high pitch keys. That's frequency. Decibels, that means how loud it needs to be. Quiet decibel means it's a very, very soft sound. Like some people, I mean, zero really is almost nothing, no sound. All the way up to 120 decibels, which is super loud. That's what the human ear can tolerate. 130 decibel can lead to damage to your hearing. That actually can happen. So most hearing people, the average, I would say, hear between 20 decibels and 25 decibels. They can hear for normal sound, if you would, normal conversation, things like that. Birds and that. Do any of you all enjoy hearing birds chirp? The water leak, the drip. It's a little bit of a quiet sound. Sound for speech, decibels to hear the P, as a matter of fact. The sound for P is a quiet sound, right? It's not, I mean, well, let me ask you, is P a sound that's quiet or loud? Right in this line here, 20 decibels in general. So 1000 hertz is the frequency. So dog barking is here. It's 70 decibels, so it's loud, but it's a low frequency of 250. So when people start losing their hearing, it really depends on the scale. Some doctors will write different things, and it would look something like this. So when a doctor writes that line like that, that means that you can hear everything below this. Anything loud you can hear, whether it's a phone or maybe a motorcycle or other things, maybe another person. What else? What else do you think could be heard? What in that if that was a person's audiogram, what else do you think they could hear? Anybody? Did I explain that clearly about the graph? Okay. So if that person had a hearing level that had this line, anything below that line, they would be able to hear. So what could that person hear?
An airplane flying by.
An airplane? Yes. Perfect. Yes. What else? Anyone else?
Lawnmower.
Right. Perfect.
A motorcycle.
Motorcycle? Yes. Absolutely. So let me show you a possibility of another person's. So if this person hearing gram looked like that, audiogram looked like that, what would they be able to hear? Would they be able to understand speech?
They could hear a dog barking.
Right. What about speech sound? Like what letters would that person be able to recognize?
Letter J.
Right, J.
M.
Maybe an M, right? Perfect.
U.
So, and E as well. E is in there. So, well, no, they wouldn't be able to really recognize an F or a P. What else wouldn't they be able to recognize?
LAR.
Right, right. LAR, right. So imagine that person, right. Exactly, perfect. So imagine that person could only hear those letters. They couldn't hear the rest of them. So how would that person's hearing look like? Can you imagine that? So that's why some people wear hearing aids that amplify those sounds to get access and might be able to amplify them enough to be able to hear. Get to this level. Then they would have more access to sounds and speech. That's what the hearing aids do. Is that clear? Understand the process of that? Okay. So I want to show you my audiogram soon, okay? Are you ready? So what do you imagine that my audiogram is going to look like? Go ahead. Go ahead, feel free to, draw it, show it, whatever. What do you think it's going to look like? Okay, great. Yeah. I enjoy you getting involved in thinking. Yeah, there's different possibilities, absolutely. I noticed that most of you put the line, some of you got it lower because you see me and I think and you see that I'm deaf and everything, and it's not upper, so it's a good guess that, very good guess that might have some access. Okay. Okay. So are you ready? I forgot how to use Zoom, so I'm a little bit, you know, a little bit rusty. This is my audiogram. You see that line at the bottom? It's about 100. Yeah, right around that. But you notice the arrows. Notice the arrows going down. What does that mean? What do you think those arrows mean? Okay, I'll show you what that means. No response. No response means I'm sitting in the room with the headphones on, and the sound is as loud, and I'm just sitting there. I have zero response. Means I hear nothing. Nothing. Not even nothing. Just nothing. Since I was born. You know. So they still did all these tests and hearing and everything. It didn't help. So my entire life, I heard nothing. and they asked me, it's like, have you already like heard sound of anything? I was like, no, I have no idea what any of it sounds like, it looks like. So that was my audiogram. And that kind of graph that shows no response, like not many people actually have that. Most of them have a little bit of hearing, some, variations, but I mean, they're still deaf, but they just have, may have access to speech or anything. But I had nothing. Lawnmowers, dogs going, nothing. I had no idea what that sounds like. It's interesting, right? Yeah. Hmm? Okay.
Joel, when you're ready. Okay, so I was born, and this is my baby picture. So I was born deaf and I grew up, right? And my parents are hearing, and there are many families who are hearing parents with deaf children. So I did have American Sign Language growing up, English, Spanish, and I do speak English, and I did learn Spanish because my family was from Miami. We grew up here, and my family spoke Spanish, and also my grandparents. And if you notice, my full name is a mix between an English, German name, Portuguese from Portugal. And I have a family, grandma is from Portugal. Have any of you been to Portugal? Have you ever been there? It is a beautiful country. Yes, I see someone has. Okay, so if you visited Portugal or toured around and tried that food, it's just delicious. My family is from the island of Azores. Do you all know where that is? Okay, so it's actually in the middle of nowhere. So if you see Portugal, there's two areas to it, right in the middle, like the north and the south, right in the center. You're gonna see that there you have to take an airport like specifically to get there, a flight, so just to get to that island. So this is my family, my parents, my brother, me, and my father and my brother are hearing. My parents and my brother is hearing. I was going to Miami-Dade College at the BCC actually at the time. And there was a Robertson Elementary School. So I did graduate from there. My father worked as a relations for the fire department, with public relations for sprinklers and things like that. So he designed them. He's an engineer and he designed the sprinklers. So also I went to school as a teacher. So I've been teaching ASL for 10 years. Are any of you familiar with FLVS? The school online, FLVS, Florida Virtual School. Okay, so I've been teaching there for 2 years and a half. So I've been a sign language teacher for 10 years, but I've been teaching there for 2 years and a half. So that has been my experience so far. So I want to go back to my upbringing and my early life. So I did notice that it tends to be the same thing. Well, what do you notice about my pictures? What I used to do all the time as a baby? My head was all the way back. I would extend my head all the way back. And the reason why was I didn't hear anything. So everything was, I had to balance the lack of hearing. So hearing and balance have a lot to do with it. They correlate with each other. So it was for me to hold my balance. But maybe you would say, oh, Daniel, I realize that there's a difference between, you now, then, and then at 7 months. So I went to therapy. Okay, so yeah, this is my, I went to a daycare, and this is my grandma's home, and really close to her was my daycare. So there was a cafeteria there as well, and my family would always go there. So I would stay over my grandma's house, and she took care of me. And there was a lot of different children. And I don't know if you noticed, but the kitchen was loud. Everyone is loud, and she cooked so good. Actually, I could smell it though. I would smell all of the different aromas of the kitchen. And the kids in the daycare, she would take care of the kids, right? They would cry, but I would just sit there smelling everything from the kitchen. But they noticed, right? They noticed that I was not at all, bothered by the noise. I was, and they that's when they started to speculate. Maybe he's deaf, but they really were doubting it. There's no way he's deaf. There's no way. So they waited. My parents were in like total denial. They said, no, he can't be deaf. Let's wait a little more to check until Christmas Day. So on Christmas Day, families come together, in the gathering in the house, and it's just full of people. So everyone is chatting, and having a ball. And then at 11 o'clock, we walk around, and everything starts. I don't know, and they were all wanting to try to test to see. So a lot of people were like saying, no, no, no. I mean, I don't know if I don't know if you like you know how they don't like for babies to be held. Okay, so you know how babies would play with like the electricity. They would want to put their hands in the socket, or they'd grabbing water from the toilet, and everyone's like, no, don't do that. They're always alarmed about the baby and trying to take care of the baby. So everyone was saying no, 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 no. And everyone was saying, hey, Daniel, be careful, be careful. And I did not pay attention to anyone saying anything. So they noticed at that point, because they're like, don't do this, don't do this. And I kept going like if nothing. And that's when they realized that I was deaf. So guess what my family did? And guess where they went? Anyone has a guess? Okay, to the doctor. Yes, they went to the doctor, but first they were in denial. There's no way he has to hear. He's normal. He's a normal baby. Look, he can they would like tap on the floor, and it was a wooden floor, and I would feel the vibration. So then I would like turn around and see, because they would say, hey, Daniel, come. But as they were calling me, they were also stepping on the like making vibration with the wooden floor, so they would stop. So like, Daniel, and then since I looked, they're like, you see, he can hear. Right? So my mom at that point decided to go to the doctor and take me to the doctor. So I went to the doctor, I sat down, and it's a sound booth that they sit you in to hear the sounds. And this is how they gather the results for the audiogram. So they did find out that I officially, with tests and all, I was deaf. So they saw all the choices of education. What can they do? How would education look like? What are the different options? So my mom did go ahead and got me hearing aids. So you see the hearing aids, how giant they were. So I had hearing aids. But you do remember that I had no response in any in my audiograms at that level of sound. So do you think that hearing aids were gonna help me? Raise your hands if you think they were gonna help. No, not at all. They did not help. Okay. And also they put me in a school called the Debbie Institute. It's literally called the Debbie Institute. And now we call it the Debbie School. And now it's called the Textual Children Development Center. So in the area of the school, it's all surrounded by hospitals. Like literally, this school is in the area where UM and Jackson, all those hospitals are. So it's really a school based on like a medical perspective. They only look at the ear. They want to see how can we help improve their deaf children's speech. You know, they see if they can go to an oral program where they're going to be able to speak and read lips. So here it says textual speech project. There was another program called TC, which is called Total Communication. TC stands for Total Communication. That means you speak and you sign at the same time, and you have sign language all the time. So a lot of times that's how they would teach. That's one form of education. And it's known all over the US, they use Total Communication for deaf schools, but then they changed it in Debbie school. They said you speak only or you sign only. So you don't sign and speak at the same time. So imagine that they had different tests, you know, for hearing, for speech. That's what they did in the Debbie school. And I forgot to add that Debbie is a girl. She was a girl who had cerebral palsy, and they decided to do a school based on her, and her name is Debbie. Her parents gave and donated lots of funds to the school, so they ended up naming the school after their daughter, Debbie. So that's where the name comes from that one girl. So I was in the classroom with my parents, teachers, and they would sign, you know, so I was there for 18 months. So in our time, I don't know if you notice the students back in the day. I'll let you observe a little bit and tell me what you notice.
Almost all
Okay,
of them.
so yes, they're carrying, and that they're carrying the hearing aid box. So the hearing aid was actually a box that amplified the noise, and then they had wires that went all the way. So it's called FM stereo as well. So it also had a mic that it would relay the information to. So the teacher had the mic, and then the sounds would come out in the box and directed to the hearing aid. So if you notice, some people so the one who do you think is the one that I circled in purple? That's me. Yes. And I don't know if you have already met this young girl who is now older, obviously. Do you know who that is? Her name is Carolina Hidalgo. So she was the one who was going to present today. So that's Carolina. So we all had a principal at the Debbie school, right? And this was the principal. Her name was Kathy. And she still works at the Debbie school today, even after many years. So she's around 80 years old now, and she's still working there. We all used sign language in the Debbie school. And they also used wait, well, let me explain how, first of all, how does the hearing aid work? So if you hear apple, that means you will hear it louder, apple. This is what my hearing looks like. I can't hear it, so what I hear, I just hear it louder. So it doesn't help me because it just amplifies what I do hear, which I don't hear. So this was a birthday. They had a celebration for my birthday, and guess what they gave me as a gift? Guess what my gift was for my birthday at the high school? Yes, a cochlear implant. This is how you sign it. Cochlear implant. Cochlear implant. So that's the sign. So cochlear implant, there's various signs. There's CI. You can sign it this way. Cochlear implant CI. Another sign is with the two fingers like this. Cochlear implant. And some people sign it with a bent V. Okay, so understand that the deaf community has their preference and everyone chooses which sign they feel more connected with. If you feel more neutral about it versus if you feel more positive about it, or if you feel negative and you're really worried about cochlear implants. So there's different ways that you sign it. So some people are that use the bent V. It seems more negative because it's like a snake, right? The same hand shape for snake is the same hand shape they're using for cochlear implant. And people who sign it in a more neutral way, they don't have a positive or negative outlook of it. They just sign CI, cochlear implant. Okay. And then some people sign it in a positive light. So more of a positive connotation. And it's like this with the two straight fingers. So the way I tend to sign it is like this. Okay. Any questions so far? No? Okay, perfect. Okay, in that time, I got the surgery for cochlear implants. And the first device was called the Nucleus 22. The first version. It's the internal parts. If you look at an x-ray of my head, this is what it would look like. So they put it here. It's that amount of the surgery that they cut and they insert it. The wire, this portion of the wire, where do you think that it goes?
In the
Do you
cochlea?
think it goes outside? Oh, what did you say?
In the cochlea?
Yes, correct. Very good. Good guess. Perfect. In the cochlea. So that wire goes through. Remember I was explaining about the ear and the follicles that move? Remember that vibrate with the sound? The hairs. So it goes through this portion right there, like in as a whole, it goes through it. Then it has electrical signals and impulses that get like this sends impulses, electrical impulses, so that it can go through the cochlea to the nerve of your brain, and it's sending the impulses this way. So it's electrical impulses that are sent. So you're gonna be able to hear electronically. And I'm gonna show you a little bit of how it looks like. So this is how it looks once it's set up and installed. And you put an exterior portion outside of your head as well. Let me show you a video. Can you hear this? Give me 1 second.
Jackie.
Two parts. An internal part called the cochlea. A cochlear implant helps people with severe to profound sensory neural hearing loss or nerve deafness. A cochlear implant has two parts. An internal part called the cochlear implant and an external part called a speech processor. The speech processor uses two small microphones to pick up sounds. It turns those sounds into signals and sends them to a transmitter. The transmitter sends the signals through the skin to the internal implant. The internal implant converts the coded signals into electrical energy and sends them to the electrode array. This stimulates the nerve fibers in the cochlea, and the signals are recognized by the brain as sound.
Okay, so that's how the cochlear implant works. Any questions so far about the cochlear implant or anything we've discussed so far? No? All right.
A cochlear implant.
So I will show you what the surgery looks like. So if you feel a little squeamish, then go ahead and, don't look. If you're fine with seeing the video, then that's okay. But it's going to actual surgery. So if you're squeamish, are you ready?
This is Gregory Arts, and this is a short video reviewing the basic concepts of cochlear implant surgery. The patient's head is turned to the right for a right cochlear implant. Here I am marking out the incision. The incision is cosmetically hidden in the post-auricular crease, and the incision is extended for approximately 2 centimeters above the ear to allow for exposure of the temporalis muscle to create a pocket where the implant will be placed. Once the incision has been made, the dissection is then carried down to the temporalis muscle. Here I am dissecting just superiorly to the temporalis muscle. And I'm placing the template, which helps create the pocket where the implant will be eventually placed just above the bone. I've marked out the area where a depression in the bone will be drilled for the implant to sit.
Notice how he's
Before
moving
making that
everything.
depression for
Make
the
sure
implant,
everything's
I need to
over.
access the cochlea where the electrode will be inserted into the cochlea. To access the cochlea, here I am drilling an opening in the mastoid bone called a mastoidectomy.
It has to drill
This
through
image
it.
is looking through the facial recess right above the facial
So we,
nerve,
so we can
or the
access
nerve
the
that gives us facial expression. So it is important to protect that nerve.
So you notice right here,
Here I'm
that's where they have
demonstrating the
to access
position where the
cochlea because
cochleostomy will
it's
be
the wire.
performed. Here you can see the opening I have created with a 1 millimeter diameter drill bit. Now I am back under the temporalis muscle. This is a measuring depth gauge that will size the depth of the depression where the implant will eventually sit. Here is a template, which is the size of the implant, making sure that the area I've created is large enough. Now a small channel is drilled within the bone for the electrode, and small holes in the bone are created for the suture that will tie the implant down to secure it in place so it does not move or migrate over time.
Those holes help be able to make things stay in place so they can actually physically
Here is
sew it.
the implant. Advanced Bionics is an American company from Valencia, California that produces this product. You can see on the left is a magnet, which is how the external processor communicates with the internal unit that I am placing right now. The internal unit conducts the electrical signal directly to the cochlea and the auditory nerve. Here I am securing the implant in that well with a suture, and here is the implant electrode. The implant inserter instrument is sitting right here at the cochleostomy that I created previously during the mastoidectomy portion of the procedure.
That
Here
wire
I'm
goes
slowly advancing the
around
implant into
all
the
the
cochlea.
way.
A small amount of muscle is placed around the electrode to seal the cochleostomy to prevent a leakage of cochlear fluid, or what's called perilymph.
Is that what that does? Is
I'm
helps the
coiling the
bone
electrode
regrow
within the
over?
mastoid cavity to protect it.
Another reason why they add that.
The wound is then closed with several layers of sutures. The dressing is applied. Patients are sent home the same day of surgery, and the wound is evaluated 1 week after surgery. The implant is activated 3 weeks
Okay,
after
so that
surgery,
is the video.
at which time the patient begins using the implant and beginning the process of learning to hear again. This is Gregory.
Okay, so that is the surgery video. So some of you, I understand you don't want to watch it, so now we're back. So I've experienced two of those surgeries, one on each side. The first surgery was 1994 on this side, the second one in this side in 2010. But I still just use one anyway, the second one, because my brain, isn't used to it so much. So the first one I still use. So you want to see the first one, what it looked like? The first surgery, when it was done, now understand, it was a map. It's a program that maps the hearing with the brain. So this is my first program and what it looked like. First program. You can hear that, yeah?
Beep, beep.
So the first sounds was electrical. So I could hear it. It's like I could raise my hand. I understood what that was. I mean, I wanted toys. That's what I was focused on. So if I could hear it, then great.
Okay, with the computer.
And we can find out
Listen.
which sound that I can hear.
Excited about it. Let's do one more and then I'll ask
After
you.
the program.
Good. All right, good for you. Okay, Daniel, which one? Loud? Fine. Little. Which one do you feel?
Okay, notice she asked me sounds, nothing or anything like that. Did you notice my response? What did my response look like? Right. You notice I just ignored them. Why do you think I ignored them? I mean, why do you think that? Remember, I was explaining about my background, not hearing anything, all the way up until this point. They asked me, "Is it loud?" Do you think I understood what that meant? I had no clue. You're right. I didn't know what that meant. Loud. I don't know. I mean, so that's what was happening. It was my first exposure to sound. The very first day, the first time I ever heard sound. So I was like, "What is this? What is that? Where is it coming from? What is this?" That's what I was experiencing for the first time.
It's kind of a, yeah, it's kind of abstract. Okay.
So they repeated it again and again and again until my brain started recognizing it. It's like, oh, I began to realize where it was coming from.
Nothing? Nothing? This one? Yeah, but you would think you would at least see a picture. Yeah, you're supposed to see it. Let's try it again. No. Wait. Take it out. Wait. It says it's recording. Listen, all right.
That's when I first realized, like, oh, that's sound. Oh, yes, I actually can hear that. Okay. So that's when I had to practice. And so I was really young. So I didn't know anything. So it required a lot of training. It required uh, taking a few minutes to understand that the electrical signals, where they were coming from and what they meant, what that sound specific was. And I realized there were.
Good for you. Which one? Which one? Is it loud?
Okay, so again, There's different pitches, there's hertz, there's frequencies, everything. They're measuring all of that as 22 electrical nodes that actually send sound with the cochlear. Meaning the test would signal to one and figure out which one works, which number works best with that. And then move on to the next node and so on and so forth, all the way till they got to number 22. And then that was it. Then they would turn on the cochlear implant and start singing, but it was loud. All of them, all 22 were on instead of just one. So guess what that sounded like? Loud. Just like when you have a car radio and you left it on and you forgot to turn the radio off when you got out of your car, and then you come back later on and you turn it on, all of a sudden the music just blares in your ears. That's precisely what happened to me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Which one?
Okay. Give him a sec. Why don't you pat him on the back a little bit?
Yeah, it was very loud.
On that, maybe we give him a break and start him when he's sitting here. Give you a battery recharger and 2 rechargeable batteries to go with it. Just goes in the back right here. Put it in. And that just slides right.
And how do you turn it on? You just
Okay, on the top here.
right.
When it's on O, it's
Yeah.
off. Nothing. Okay. You set it to N. It's on. Ba, ba,
That's
ba,
how
ba,
we
ba,
used to dress as
Daniel.
well.
Daniel.
Like
So he's kind of going like this.
No.
Right.
He doesn't know whether he wants to grin about it or not.
Too.
Finish. We're going to let him go by noon, so he'll be back over about
Come
noon.
here, Daniel.
And big
Daniel,
glasses.
You heard
are
that.
normal thing,
Come
too.
here.
Grandma and grandma.
That's when I first started hearing different background noises from all around.
Daniel, the cochlear implant. Day 2, February 16th, 1994. Mama. Mama. Daniel.
Okay, so that was my first few days of having a cochlear implant. So you notice the CI, we didn't know, but a lot of them, we didn't know what they looked like. We didn't know anything. Had to learn all these different sounds, the background noises, the birds, all the different sounds, what they meant. Everything that people knew learning up as a baby, they just naturally heard it. I heard nothing. I was just born into a blank sound, and I had to learn it later. So I use it every day, all the time. So even if I went to go Santa Claus, I would put it on. I would use it all the time. So people at that time in the 1990s, they had no clue what a cochlear implant was. So often I got the question from many people like, "Hey, what is that? What is that?" Because I have this blocks. It's like the people just have to ask all the time, and my mom would go into explanation and things like that a lot. So if you remember, I was explaining about my hearing level at that time with the, that I heard nothing. And so when I got a cochlear implant, my hearing level went to here. So remember I was saying that 25 to 20 is normal human level speech? Mine was around that after I got it. So I could hear a ton of sounds. I could hear all speech. I had most access to all the sounds that you have. It's pretty cool, right? So this is the percentage that I have for speech and sound, like the words, sentences, the different kind of things. So on my left ear, I could understand about 88% without reading lips, without looking. 88% of the time. It's pretty good from hearing nothing. It's not common in the deaf community for this to happen. Just keep that in the back of your mind. For me, like 88 meaning that was the 60% of my right ear. Remember, I got the CI later on, and it just I prefer to just focus on my left ear instead of my right ear. So my right ear, I have it, but my right ear was only 16% with the cochlear implant, which meaning my right ear doesn't process very well. Correct, with the cochlear implant. So what happened with that is I got the cochlear implant in 1994 on my left ear. When I was 5, I was young. My brain still was in development. So the nerve still hadn't fully developed and made all these attachments. So doing a lot of training, it was able to get a strong connection. Later on in 2010, I went to get the right ear. I was already 20 years old. My brain had already established the development of sound and everything like that. So the muscles were already weak on the right ear. So when I got the cochlear implant and all of a sudden started getting these signals, the connections just weren't being made. And so things weren't clear, things got muddled, and my brain just decided to shift and focus on my left ear on its own. So my right ear, I could understand still about 16% of the words and everything, but not clearly. And it's just too weak. So my left ear was really strong, had that great connection. So I'm a deaf person. I have interpreters in my classrooms. I have the whole gambit. But most of the time, I just don't rely much on the interpreters. I just watch the professor. And even when I ask questions or raise my hand with the professor, when I interact with the professor, I use my own voice. Yes, that's me. That's my personal preference. And everyone is different. Every individual uses their own way to communicate. And it's a very good question about that. I really appreciate you asking me a question about that percentage, that 16%. So my cochlear, as you see that, remember that big box? Later on, I got an update, and that was this new technology. Didn't have to have that wire around hanging around me anymore. So before, sometimes, like I'd have a question, I have to go to the bathroom, I was in bed, I had to take things off, and this thing would fall off all the time. I had to put it back in. There's a lot of work. There's a hassle having to go through that. But now having no wires hanging around my chest, I was really excited. Okay. So I was very, very grateful that my parents, because so often when a lot of parents will go see a doctor, the doctor tends to say, "Oh, cochlear implant? Okay, what does that mean?" Just put away the signing, no signing whatsoever, and just focus solely on speech. That's what they tell them. It's true. My parents like, no, we're going to continue to sign. And they asked, what? Well, why do you think my parents decided to continue to sign? Why do you think they felt that way? Mm-hmm. Right, so they can communicate 100%. You're right. And at that time, I was 5, meaning I was ready to speak English at that time, right after getting cochlear implant? Do you really think I was ready? Remember you saw that video of me 5, the very first day that I got it? Do you think I started speaking right away? No, of course not. I wasn't ready. I had no clue what sound was. None whatsoever. I didn't know what whistles are. I didn't know what planes were. I had nothing. This was a whole new world to me. Hearing, what did this even look like? So touch, I knew that. I knew taste. I knew sight. But that's it. But now I got the fifth sense of hearing. This is crazy. It's driving me crazy. So I had to take time, and my parents knew that, and they still wanted to communicate me, and they chose to continue to sign because they want me to have an education. They still teach me to read and write English and things like that, but still sign and make those correlations. Math, sign it. I'm so grateful my parents continue to do that because so many children now, the very first day, the parents, okay, yeah, we'll get that. And often, though, the children's language is gone because they stop signing. They're deprived of their language. Most children don't get the education and they're so far behind. And nowadays, we have so many high school deaf students in high school. Most of them, their grade level is kindergarten in reality.
And Joel, when you're ready.
And then because they don't want to listen, because the parents listen to the doctors. Go ahead.
Not to their deaf teacher. So not to the deaf experts. Not they listen to a hearing doctor and a hearing expert. And of course, the deaf community is smaller, so it's like a minority, and they go for the majority, right? Most of the people that are hearing, the doctors, and they often believe, the white coat, right? Those with degrees, but still, experience makes a difference. So let's think that, please think about that. Okay. So both of my parents, I want to backtrack a little bit. When I was a young baby, and they found out that I was deaf, of course, my parents, well, how many of you are parents already and already have children? Okay, so I see one is already a parent. Okay, when something is wrong with your kid, how do you feel? You start thinking, what do I do? How do, what happened? You start to also blame yourself, right? You're like, oh no, what did I do wrong? Is it my fault? What happened? And they had the same feelings. They felt guilty. They felt like they did something wrong. What could have gone wrong? And they felt like they blamed themselves. They felt like that they were at fault. My father, though, my mother actually was thinking about it. And she remembered that she worked with another teacher. Yeah, who had Usher syndrome. Oh, I'm sorry. Interpreter. She remembers that she had a coworker that had a rash. And it was actually the measles. So my mom touched that teacher while she was pregnant with me. She was in contact with her, with that other teacher. So she did get exposed. So she said, oh, it could have been that. That's what I think, that it caused, and rubella actually happens after that. So rubella is often the cause of children becoming deaf in the womb. So it could be, they could become deaf, they could become blind. They could also have developmental issues. That's what rubella can cause. And she thought, yes, I gave my son, deafness through that. Now, my dad, he didn't think it was rubella. He remembered that I had a really high temperature of like 101.4, and he brought me to the ER. They gave me medicine and fluids, and it's true, a high fever can cause deafness. So I want you to tell me, what do you think caused my deafness? You don't know? Okay. So I'm going to explain how it happened. When I met my father's side of the family, I met the aunts and the uncles of my dad's side of the family. And I did have a few people in the family, cousins, that were deaf, that were stone deaf. So I thought that was very interesting. My family, my father's side, there's a few strong, profound deaf. Now, my mother's side, she explained to me that she did get exposed, and she did, but did my mom herself get sick? Did she actually get the measles and rubella? She didn't. So when she explained that to me, I really doubted it. I said, well, you maybe were in contact and were exposed to someone, but if you did not get sick, then I don't think that's the reason. So then I went ahead and did this. So my parents felt so guilty. It was their fault. They blamed themselves because of the rash or because of the high fever, and they didn't take care of me. So I shut all those, thoughts in an instant. So I went ahead and did have you ever experienced 23andMe? Has anyone done that test for yourself about your genetics? Well, 23andMe is a genetic test, and it searches your ancestral history, like where you're from, if you have any health, issues in your family, if it's something that has happened from generation to generation. And guess what I found? The gene, just like the hair cells, the hair cells in the cochlea, this gene causes the hair cells to be distorted. And actually mine, I didn't have anything. There is no hairs. So in mine, there's no hairs. It's like, when you're bald, right? But let's say my cochlea is bald, right? So I have no hair in the cochlea, and it's a genetic factor. Both of my parents gave me the gene, and I asked my mom just to see like how it was prominent in her. And she said, I asked her, is there any deaf in the family? And they said, yes, there is. There's someone who signs in my family. So we determined finally that it was not the rash, how do you think that made my mom feel?
Maybe better.
Relieved. For 30 years, she held that guilt, and she finally felt relieved. Yeah, she felt better. So my dad also felt guilty. I didn't take care of my son when he had the fever, and that was the cause, but no, it was just genetics. We can't blame genetics, right? It's just what happens. So no one to blame in that sense. So connection 26 is a mutation in the 26 gene. Oh, it's called connection 26. So it's potassium that, you need potassium for your hair follicles to attach and to grow. I didn't have enough potassium. That genetic mutation did not allow for potassium, so my hair never grew. That's why I would hear no response in all of my audiograms. And I have a question. At what time does this class end? 11? 11:20. Okay, thank you. So, I'm curious to see what is your perspective and your point of view. Just curious. I have an open question. If you all ever have a child, or if you know any family member of yours that ends up having a child who is deaf, I'm curious, will you consider having a cochlear implant for your child? Please raise your hand if you would consider it. Do you mind sharing your reasons why? Okay, help with it. Okay, go ahead.
Probably wait for them to decide when they're older or something. Just like they can have the choice of it. Cause I don't know. It's kind of invasive to like decide for them. That may just be me though.
Okay, that's a very popular point of view. It's a very valid point of view. A lot of people have that same perspective and that same argument. So yeah, a lot of people feel that way. Is there any other perspective? I'm just curious.
I mean,
Alicia, yes.
before you explained it, I would say no. But after you explained it, like as you're growing up as a child, being able to develop early and have those neural connections that really work, in a child in a hearing family, I can understand wanting to get a cochlear, but I would only do it if ASL was connected as well, not deprive the child of their language.
Okay, that's a very good perspective as well. Okay, thank you for sharing your thoughts. I appreciate it. Anyone else would like to share as well? Anyone else? And Joy, if you could switch with me for a second.
So my perspective would kind of be somewhat similar to Alicia's. Like, since it matters for a cochlear implant to be done at a younger age for the connections to be stronger, I would probably have to like think about like how effective it would be, or like because it's a surgery, it's a surgical procedure, so like I'd have to think about like, is it worth like doing it? But I don't think I'd ever take ASL away from the kid, because I think that like growing up with that language is very important for them. But like the cochlear, as for like doing the cochlear implant itself, I think it would like depend on how like severe the hearing loss is, like if it's like kind of really worth doing all of that, because like the surgery is an expensive procedure. There's like potential for anything to go wrong when you're doing a surgery. So it'd be like something I'd probably have to think about for a while. But if I did it, it would definitely not take ASL away.
Okay, well, I appreciate you all sharing your stories and your comments regarding CI and how you would decide what's early, later, what would, go into it. I mean, it is your decision, and I don't want to seem biased at all with just my thoughts and my opinions. I don't want to give you that to make it a decision. I want you all to do your own research, find out the different things and resources that would lead you to make the decision that you is best for you. I want to make sure that you hear from different perspectives, from different deaf individuals, different perspectives from the medical field, different perspectives from the community, because we all have different communities. We have a deaf community, yes. However, remember, we have middle communities, deaf educated communities, middle class, and then we have the working class, grassroots deaf community, where they are strong deaf ASL with no education, no formal education, and everything like that. So we have the same variety of communities, and they all have different opinions about the cochlear implants. For me, especially, I am very proud to use my cochlear implant. I'm very proud. I love it. I'm very grateful to my parents for making that decision for me when I was young, because my brain had time to develop, meaning now I don't have to work so hard to learn to use it. And so I got it when I was young. I mean, that's my personal experience and perspective, you know, but my other one didn't work. So then why get it? So there really, it's an individual's, experience, and it depends on the commitment that's going to take. I mean, I'm very happy when I got it when I was young, yes, but the deaf community looks at me in a way that's tough. At that time in 1995, a cochlear implant got a lot of criticism. Oh, you have a CI? Oh, you're not deaf anymore. Get away. You're hearing now. Go. They would look at me and label me as hearing. They would label me in a mainstream classroom that I didn't use an interpreter, and I spoke with the teacher. Oh, he's hearing, and oh, he uses English. So I'm like, okay, so I got to have an interpreter prove that I'm deaf to prove that I am who I say I am. I had this issue for years. I mean, they couldn't accept who I was as a cochlear implant user. Everything. It was just hearing. No, but also my identity, the psychological help that came with it. I mean, so often, so many friends as a young person that they went away, they developed their own way in school, and they didn't want to use English, or how proud they were, how proud I was as a cochlear implant user in the community. So my only friends tended to be those who had cochlear implants at the time, just like me. Very, very small group, like tiny. That's all we did, like maybe 3 or 4 of us. And the program probably had 60 students though. And they all used hearing aids or something like that. And I wanted to play their games, like, no, you're ostracized. Oh, no, you can't join this because you have a CI. It was tough and a very challenging time for me. But I mean, I'm still grateful, that I got to use ASL. So, like I was explaining about the acceptance and rejection. In 1995, during that time, it was tough. It really was. I was young and I was new to the experience. I had people bullying me because I had the cochlear implant. I was like, oh no, you can't. You can't decide because you're deaf and you're hearing. No. And so then later on, I identify as deaf, and my identity started to dwindle because I just wanted to give up on my deaf identity. I just forget it then. I almost closed it off. I almost got so tired of it. That was leading me to figure out who I was and to accept it. So being in mainstream school with interpreter, I didn't want it. Deaf students that were there, I didn't want to be with them. And as things went on, that's the way it was. I went to college. I was the only deaf student with an interpreter. And sometimes they noticed the cochlear implants, like, oh, I need a break. Got the cochlear implant all day. My brain was just exhausted. I just needed a break. I just needed to sign, use my language, my first language. So my friend who was the interpreter, we would just start talking and start signing. And the relief that I felt, I mean, even using a video phone, talking with friends, catching up, I felt lonely. I mean, and then I just didn't want to be around the deaf community. So after I graduated college, then I realized that I was hungry for home. I was deaf sick, if you would. I was homesick for the deaf community, for the signing every day. It was something I needed because I was speaking all day, every day, speaking. And wow, the cochlear implant was great, but imagine you went to another country and you didn't know their language, but you were required to speak their language all day, every day for 4 years. How would you feel? Yes, you would be drained, mentally exhausted. For 4 years, I was speaking all day. It wasn't my first language. I was just speaking all day. It's like, no, 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 no. I want to get back to my identity. My identity was failing. I needed to bring this back and be proud of it. And they call it, well, you had a question? Somebody had a question? No? Okay. So I went into RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, and I have two colleges I was thinking about going to. I was thinking about going to Gallaudet University. Have you heard of Gallaudet? Yes. Okay. And then RIT. Have you heard of RIT? RIT. Okay. Rochester in New York. It's a hearing college and have a lot of hearing students that go there. Yes. But they have one deaf school at RIT. It's a school for engineering, for the science, for business. They have different schools under it, like just like at FIU, right? That's a school of engineering, school of business, school, depending on your major. Well, RIT has different schools as well. That's school of engineering, school of business, school of videography, school of deaf. But it's called National Technology Institute of the Deaf, NTID. That whole school, the whole major was everything like that. Plus, they had a program that provided support to, like, if a student needed to transfer to different schools or different institutes, wanted to go into engineering, things like that. So I was like, this is interesting. And the huge group of students, deaf students, I got 1,000, 2,000 deaf students there at RIT. So I was like, wow.
When you're ready.
A moment. And so trying to go in mainstream there with the cochlear implant, signing, the guy that was like really strong deaf identity, and my identity had not been fully recovered yet. I mean, I got it out, I would have been destroyed completely. They would have destroyed me, but because I didn't have it for myself. But I needed that. I needed to get it. So I decided to go to RIT and process that. And as I became more confident in my deaf identity, and so then that's what I did. I went there and I felt such relief, such a gain. It's like, oh yeah, cochlear implant, cool, yeah. I have several friends that have cochlear implants. That's cool, yeah. And I was like, what, really? It's my first experience of seeing that, being strong deaf with a cochlear implant, and you didn't mind. Imagine that, how I felt that day, the relief. Okay, switch.
So yeah, it really was like a protecting myself. I didn't have to protect myself. I didn't have to defend myself. It was like an acceptance. So I finally felt like my identity became stronger. And I wanted to now experience the Deaf Institute more. And I decided to go ahead and do an intern at the Deaf Institute. And I went to Texas and to the deaf school there. And I wanted to go to the other deaf schools and see how they were. And I really got into the deaf world that way. So cochlear implants now, they're okay. Now a lot of people accept it more. But back in the day in 1995, a lot of teachers and students picked on me. Oh, you have a cochlear implant. They would laugh, and they would sign this. They would laugh and they would say, oh, you are a robot. You are a robot. You have a machine inside of you, So, and imagine I got two cochlear implants and I'm proud of it. So that time it really took some time for me to get to it, but I used to be careful what I used to say, how I used to do it. So how it was before, I had to be careful. You never knew what was going to happen, but now look at the future. So you never know what's going to happen. We learn from these experiences. And it could happen to you. It could happen to anyone else in your family. It can happen to someone you know. You never know. So it's really good to always hone in and listen, because you never know when it can happen to you or to someone close to you. So this has been my experience. Does anyone have any questions about my experience, or would you like to share about your experience? Okay, Marie, go ahead.
I know that you talked about the feeling that you had afterwards with the acceptance or rejection. But if you can recall, I know you were young when you got your cochlear implant, how you felt before you could hear sounds.
Okay, so at 5 years old, I do remember. I do remember prior to that time. I remember when I was fully deaf, and people would like cheer, or and still, and oh, I'm sorry, when people would sign, and it was like sign language was all about the deaf community and all about signing. And I do remember the change I felt when I had the cochlear implant. Like many of the deaf people in the community feel like they lose themselves a bit. Like they lost the deafness, they lost that. So I became less uh so pro sign, and it was like a disconnect a bit. But you know I don't, it wasn't clear, but I started to slowly disconnect with the deafness and the deaf community. So until middle school, then it was like, whatever's in your actual mind, it's not what they put in. But so I started to get, more of a story for myself, but I didn't feel depleted. So that's when I decided to do more of the avoidance. Okay. Does anyone else want to share, or does anyone have any questions before we move on? Okay, we'll move on. Okay, so I spoke about the peer interaction. Okay, so again, I am grateful to my parents, and the deaf community, and the professionals that I met, and the partnerships I made growing up, and while I traveled to different deaf schools, and for being stubborn in the signing, right? Like we're gonna continue to sign. So I went to the University of Florida. I graduated with my degree, cum laude. So I graduated with my degree with honors, and I went into my master's from RIT, and I in the teaching program, and I traveled successfully. I earned income, and very successful. So I was very grateful to my parents for providing ASL, for continuing the ASL. No matter if I had the cochlear implant, they still continued it. So I'm very grateful for that. There are many students that go to RIT, and they're very grateful for their parents because the same story. Their parents continued ASL. And I do know lots of parents that unfortunately, when they have cochlear implants, they let go of the signing altogether. So I'm very thankful to my family. And I traveled, I went to different deaf schools, and then I came back to Miami. And then I decided to change majors. I wanted to become a civil engineer. So now I am back at FIU in school, and I'm still taking classes at FIU with you all, right? In the university. So, and do you know where the engineering school is at the FIU campus? So FIU has different campuses, the Modesto, the the South Campus, the big one. But then there's one really close by, I think like 1 mile away from there on 8th Street. It's only a school for engineering. So it has engineering buildings, it has everything that we need for engineering. So it's just a while away. So I don't know if you all knew about that campus. So that's where I go to study. And if you ever go there, I'll be there taking classes. And I did recently get accepted into a job of civil engineering related, so I am really excited. And again, I'm very grateful for my parents. I don't think they know how grateful I am. It's just I've been able to get to this point. Okay. I want to talk about other things before I go to other topics. Is there anything that any questions about my cochlear implant, about my parents' decisions, about anything at all? I'm open to questions. So feel free to ask.
I don't have a question. I just had a comment. I mean, I feel like your parents made the right
Okay, that's
decision.
great. Go ahead.
I feel like your parents made the right decision because just like learning ASL is going to take us a couple years, to master a language. So obviously, in your situation, a child, even starting with a baby, kids don't talk and start mastering language till like 3 or fully till 4 years old. So it doesn't make sense to have given somebody the implant and then just think that overnight they were going to master something. It's going to take 4 years, and that is why I understand when you're saying that people were left behind, because they didn't think about the fact that it still takes 4 years to really, really, really master a language.
And plus, remember, not only that, but understand that the cochlear implant is not 100% accessible to language. It's not that you get all of the English language, so you would need maybe 8 years to master language with a cochlear implant. But ASL is a fully visual language and it's fully accessible, and deaf have access to sight. And then that's all. Do you expect us to work that much harder to hear when even the hearing is not complete? So parents had access to both visual and audio, but we both had one thing in common: we can both see a language. So they decided to learn. So which would be better, having them choose, to learn a language that they're visual, or have someone who can't hear to learn a language that is audio? So it's very mean of the hearing, that they have their visual accessibility and they don't learn the language that is visual, So you all are taking American Sign Language, and I'm very grateful that you are taking this class because you're getting an exposure of the deaf community, and you are going to be, using a language that the deaf community needs, So I really encourage you to continue to learn, and stay motivated. I'm very, very proud and grateful for you all. Go ahead.
I have a comment also. I think you're along with the other students' comment. I think your parents did make the right decision for the fact that they gave you a choice. You don't you get to choose if you want to be in the hearing community and the deaf community. They allowed you a choice instead of just being completely deaf with no access versus having the cochlear implant. You were able to choose your own deaf identity other than not having a choice at all.
Right. Yes. Perfect. I love that. And I would love for everyone to participate in that, because this Zoom, I know it has a room. Is JP here? Is Mr. Jebian here? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So I just want to see if we have like private rooms, but I would love to have like a debate. A debate and a discussion on, have you ever done that? Have you ever been in a debate in Zoom with different rooms and things like that? Okay, so we can have maybe a short debate right now and discuss this. So I can do two groups.
He's about to make a
Okay,
debate.
so one group. I'm sorry, does someone have a question?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. If no one has a question, I'll continue. Okay, so we can have two groups. The organization, one is called Alexander Graham Bell, A.G. Bell, and the other organization will be about, and will be about ASL. So you will be a member of either one of these groups. So you have to support only one. Like, for example, Alexander Graham Bell, he was not for ASL. And the other group is speaking, but including sign language. So not letting go of your speech, but including sign language. So there's a challenge for each group. So in the first group, you need to support and explain why it's important to speak English only, no ASL. And then in the other group, you can say why you think you should support both speaking and ASL. So that's the difference between the groups. I like to see both perspectives, and I want to open it up for discussion and for comments. And then with the both groups, so the group that says no ASL and the group that says ASL and spoken English. And we'll open for, you'll have discussions, and then we'll open for comments with each other, and then there'll be debates. So we'll say, give me your point. Then the other group says their point to counteract. Okay, now you start with neutral. Everyone gets a chance to start with their own comment. So one has one comment, and then the other group has another comment, and then they can go and debate back and forth. So you can open for you can debate that, or you can say, okay, no, I don't want to debate that. So we can have two rooms. We'll set up one room that has closed comments and one that has open comments. So another one would be an identity. When you're in your group, I'm going to send you in your own room so that you can discuss and come up with all the ideas that you need to come up with. And you will decide who will be your representative to speak. Okay? Does anyone have any questions before I divide you into those two groups? Everyone feels ready? Are you sure? Any questions? Okay, let me see how I can divide you into groups and into rooms, two different rooms on Zoom. And I'm going to send an interpreter to each room so that when I show up, they'll be interpreting for me. So the name of the groups is A.G. Bell, and the other one NAD, which is the National Association of the Deaf. So those are the two perspectives in the two groups. So you'll be a member and you're going to believe, yes, like Alexander Graham Bell did and his organization, we will not use ASL, we will use English. And then the NAD is, no, we're going to use speech and ASL. So I'm going to go ahead and separate you in your groups now. Ready? I'm going to send you to your groups. Hello, everyone. Oh, he froze for me. Okay. So let's go ahead and open up with a first comment. Who would like to start? Can you hear the interpreter?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's start with opening up the floor, and I feel we should start with NAD. That group should start first, and then we'll have Alexander Graham Bell's group be second. Okay, so who's gonna be the representative for the NAD group? Where's the NAD representative? Okay, so go ahead and start with your opening statements.
Okay. So obviously, you want someone to be the best version of themselves. And in order to be the best version of yourself, you can't restrict one from the other. So it only makes sense educationally, also for their own spirituality and acceptance, to be able to communicate in both English and also sign. That's where we're starting.
Okay, great. Thank you for your time. Okay, hand clap. Everyone, let's give a hand clap. A round of applause. And okay, so now, Alexander Graham Bell Organization, please open up with your comment.
Hello, I'm our representative. My name is Karina. So our main point of thrust is that in a hearing world, ASL has limited exposure. Not every day or everywhere you will see typically a large group of deaf people around. So it's hard to say like you trying to communicate in ASL to someone who speaks English. English is more the broadened form of communication.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing your opening statements. Do you want to take any time to discuss any rebuttals, or do you want to just go ahead and rebuttal? Do you want to discuss? If you raise your hand, if you want more time in your individual groups to discuss. Oh.
I'm okay with rebuttaling now.
Or you're ready to rebuttal. Raise your hand if you're ready to rebuttal and debate.
That's up to you.
Okay, so you feel ready to rebuttal. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and start the rebuttal with NAD. Who would like to represent NAD now?
Is it still me, you guys? I mean, if it's all right.
Okay.
So I do understand their point that yes, you are in a country that speaks English, and yes, the national language is also English, and but if you restrict a person with just only speaking English and they have the cochlear implant, it is not even guaranteed 100% that they would be able to hear everything that you're saying. So this person is at a disadvantage if you're limiting them. So now the person who is forced to speak a language that they can barely hear will not get the proper education, will not be able to properly represent themselves, and you are limiting them. So I understand that, yes, we're in America, we speak English, okay? However, how are you going to educate this individual? Just because they're in a minority doesn't make that they should be that excluded.
Okay, thank you for your rebuttal. Now we're gonna give it off to the Alexander Graham Bell. Would you like to rebuttal back or get into your groups and discuss more?
Rebuttal.
Okay, go ahead and rebuttal.
For NAD, I understand your viewpoint, but to refute what you said about the limited access to language, even in foreign countries where their main form of communication or their main language isn't English, their second typically tends to be or is English. So, and even people who don't speak English, learn or somehow manage to learn and incorporate their own language to educate themselves.
Okay, great for sharing your rebuttal. Okay, thank you. So I understand that this discussion is, some people in the group agree or even disagree with their point of views. But that's what the comments are, that's what this is all about. So, and I just want to make sure, I know that it's not individual ideas. But we know that people have in general in this world, they do have these ideas. So it's just really good to process through both perspectives. I'm really happy with the two groups. And I would like to hear now your closing statements. I can give you time to discuss your closing statements. You already had your opening statements, you had your rebuttal. So now I want you to discuss a bit and come back and let us know what your closing statements are going to be. So I'll give you 3 minutes to make your closing statements, okay?
Okay, we're all back now. So I'm excited to hear your closing statements. So, somebody from NAD, what is your closing comments? Go ahead and begin.
Okay. We recognize that we are in America. One of the best things about being in America is the diversity. America is literally made up of multiple countries, multiple cultures. So we're not saying that ASL is strictly for the deaf. We want you to embrace all the countries, all the diversities, all the cultures. So we do recognize English in addition to ASL, all the opportunities that are available, being an interpreter or just at work or having your child embrace themselves and building that self-confidence and also being fully educated and closing the gap on ignorance. And that's what we're just saying. Both, not one, not the other, but both.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. Everybody give a hands up. Perfect. Now, AG Bell, please share your closing statements.
Good morning, everyone. As we stated throughout this debate, English should be the only language. Besides ASL having a marginalized exposure, and foreign countries teaching and having ASL as their second language, there's also the fact that interpreters cost a lot of money, and having interpreters in classes causes distraction to hearing students. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your closing statements. Awesome. So I want to applaud you all for really thinking about this and showing me that you were thinking that how it affects the community. I mean, I believe that AG Bell and NAD represent or are represented very well, and y'all did a great job. I understand AG Bell, they represent actually supporting signing, but it's hard for them to make this shift. I mean, they really have to think hard about it. But AG Bell, people do talk about, they talk about interpreter costs. They talk about how to save costs with and save the preserve English and things like that. So that is good thought. And with NAD and everything, how NAD represents people in that discussion. So we still have two polarizing things. So you two, y'all did a great job in seeing how people think. Fantastic. I applaud you all. Okay, so I think that is it from me. It's been a long class so far. All right. So, does anyone have any questions before we wrap up and close out?
I have a question.
No?
Um,
Okay,
do,
sure.
do you still use your cochlear implant today, like on a regular basis, or just sometimes, or not at all?
Still do it. Still use it. I love it. I still use ASL as well because I love it. Okay. Any other questions from anyone? I'm very excited to see you all here and answer any of your questions. So, if not, then I hope you all have a great weekend and I will see you around again. All right. Take care, everyone.